Welcome to our deep dive, everybody, into conditional sentences in American English. If you've ever wanted to, express those what-if situations.
Yeah.
Or just sound more fluent, you're in the right place. We're going to be breaking down all kinds of conditional sentences, both real and unreal, and how to use them confidently.
That's right. Think of conditional sentences as those secret doorways, possibilities and hypothetical situations. Imagine being able to just effortlessly say things like, if I was a chef, I would open a restaurant. Or, if you practice every day, you'll improve quickly.
That's a great way to put it. I love those sentences open up a world of possibilities. And hey, listener, feel free to repeat these examples as we go along. It's like a little workout for your English muscles. All right, so let's start with the real conditional sentences. What exactly are we talking about here?
Well, real conditional sentences, they describe situations that are actually possible. Those cause and effect scenarios we encounter every day. Think of it like, if I eat too much sugar, I get a headache. That's a real possibility, right?
Right. Okay, so it's about real-life actions and consequences. Could you give us an example of a present real conditional?
Absolutely. Let's say, if I have time after work, I go to the gym. Notice both parts of the sentences use the simple present tense. It's a habit, a regular occurrence. You could also say, when I have time after work, I go to the gym, because it happens often. When and it implies a greater sense of certainty or regularity compared to if.
Got it. So if for less frequent events and when for more frequent ones. Listener, try saying those sentences out loud a couple times. If I have time after work, I go to the gym. And when I have time after work, I go to the gym.
Exactly. Repetition is key to making those structures feel natural. Now, what about past habits? Things we used to do regularly. That's where past real conditionals come in.
Interesting. Could you give us an example of that?
Think about this one. When I was a child, if it snowed, we would build a snowman. Both parts of the sentence are in the simple past tense, reflecting that past habit. We used when, because it snowed frequently during the winters.
That's a great example. And what if we wanted to emphasize that it's no longer a habit?
We can use used to add that emphasis. For instance, if we went to the park, we used to play Frisbee, now we're too busy.
That used to really highlights the change in habit. Okay, so we've covered present and past, real conditionals. What about future possibilities?
Well, that's where future real conditionals really shine. These express potential future actions based on a condition. Imagine you're planning a trip. You might say, if I save enough money, I'll travel to Europe next year.
Ooh, I like that one. If I save enough money, I'll travel to Europe next year. It feels so hopeful. So the structure is if, or when, simple present, and then simple future.
You nailed it. And just like before, the choice between if and when depends on how certain we are. If is for possibilities. When is for things we're pretty sure will happen.
Okay, let's try it out. Imagine you're planning a weekend activity. How would you use a future real conditional to express your plans?
I'd say something like, if the weather is nice this weekend, we'll go hiking in the mountains.
What about you? I think I'd say, if I finish my work early, I'll go see that new movie everyone's talking about.
Those are both great examples. You're really getting the hang of this, listener. Try those out loud a couple times, too. Remember, active participation is key to making this knowledge stick.
This is all starting to click into place. I feel like I'm building a toolbox of expressions for different situations.
Exactly. And the best part is, you can apply these real conditionals to so many aspects of your life. Whether you're making plans, setting goals, or just chatting with friends, these structures will help you communicate with more clarity and nuance. Now that we've explored those real-life scenarios with real conditionals, are you ready to step into the world of imagination and possibility? It's time to talk about unreal conditionals.
Oh, I love a good what if. It's like opening a secret door to a world of possibilities. But how do these unreal conditionals work grammatically? Are they very different from real conditionals?
They are similar in concept, but we use different tenses to signal that we're talking about hypothetical situations, not things that are actually true or likely to happen.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Can you give us an example?
Absolutely. Let's say you're daydreaming about winning the lottery. You might say, if I won the lottery, I would travel the world. Notice how we use the simple past tense, one, in the if clause, even though we're talking about a hypothetical event in the present.
Interesting. So even though it's about the present, we use the past tense to show it's imaginary, and would plus the verb to describe what we do.
Exactly. It's a signal to the listener that we're stepping into the realm of imagination. This structure is called the present unreal conditional.
Got it. If I won the lottery, I would travel the world. I can see how that sets up A hypothetical scenario. And listener. Try saying that one out loud a few times too. It's amazing how these structures start to feel more natural with a bit of practice.
I completely agree. Now, there's one little quirk with this structure. Remember how we said if I won the lottery? Grammatically speaking, it should actually be if I were to win the lottery. But in everyday conversation, using is perfectly acceptable.
So it's like a shortcut. We can say if I was or if I were and still be understood.
Precisely. It's one of those fascinating nuances of language where both forms are widely accepted. But if you want to showcase your grammar mastery, if I were is the way to go.
Good to know. Now, what about those times when we look back and wish things had gone differently? Can unreal conditionals help us express that kind of regret?
Absolutely. That's where the past unreal conditional comes in. It allows us to explore those what could have been moments. Let's say you missed a concert because you were sick. You might say, if I hadn't been sick, I would have gone to the concert.
Oh, I feel that one. If I hadn't been sick, I would have gone to the concert. It's like we're rewriting history with these past unreal conditionals. And grammatically, we're using the past perfect in the if clause and would have, plus the past participle in the second part.
Exactly. You've got it. The past perfect hadn't been. Emphasizes that the condition didn't happen, and the would have gone. Expresses the hypothetical outcome. That didn't materialize.
So we're exploring those sliding doors moments, imagining how things could have unfolded differently. It's actually quite empowering in a way to be able to express that.
I agree. It allows us to process those past experiences and perhaps learn from them. Now, what about hypothetical situations in the future? Can we use unreal conditionals for that?
That's a great question. I'm curious to know how we'd express those future what-ifs.
Well, there are actually three ways to form future unreal conditionals. But to keep things simple and focus on the most common usage, let's stick with the structure. If simple past, then would plus verb, which we use for both present and future unreal conditionals.
Okay, so the same structure can work for both present and future. Hypothetical situations.
That's right. The context usually makes it clear which one we're talking about. For example, if I had $1 million, I would buy a house on the beach. That refers to a present hypothetical. But if we said, if I had $1 million next year, I would buy a house on the beach. That implies a future hypothetical because of that specific time frame we've included.
Okay, so the time frame clarifies whether it's a present or future hypothetical.
Precisely. Now, do you want to try crafting a future unreal conditional?
Let me think. Okay, how about this? If I had more free time, I would learn to play the guitar.
Excellent example. It implies you don't have a lot of free time right now, but you're imagining what you'd do if you did. And listener, how does that sentence resonate with you? What would you do if you had more free time? Go ahead and try saying it out loud. If I had more free time, I would.
I love how these conditional sentences empower us to explore possibilities and express our hopes and dreams.
I completely agree. It's like we're painting vivid pictures with our words. This has been such a fascinating exploration of unreal conditionals. I feel like I'm starting to grasp the nuances of expressing those hypothetical situations.
But before we move on, is there anything else we need to know about using if and when in these structures?
That's a great question. Remember, unreal conditionals are all about those imaginary what-if scenarios. So we only use if in these cases, never when. When implies a sense of certainty, something that's definitely going to happen, and that doesn't quite fit with the hypothetical vibe of unreal conditionals.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
We're exploring possibilities,
Yeah.
not certainties. Now, you mentioned earlier that modal verbs can add another layer of nuance to conditional sentences. Can you tell us more about that?
Absolutely. Modal verbs like could, should, might, and would are like spices in our language. They add flavor and subtlety to our expressions, and when combined with conditionals, they create even more expressive possibilities.
Okay, I'm ready to spice things up. What are some examples of how these modal verbs work in conditional sentences?
Well, imagine you're giving advice to a friend who's feeling nervous about a presentation. You could say, if I were you, I would practice a few more times. That would practice combines the modal verb would with the action of practicing.
That makes sense. If I were you, I would practice a few more times. It's like we're stepping into their shoes and offering a hypothetical course of action.
Exactly. And sometimes those modal verbs change form. When used in conditionals, for instance, would plus can becomes could. So instead of saying, if I had more time, can go to the gym. We'd say, if I had more time, you'd go to the gym.
Okay, that's a subtle but important change. So would can turns into could. Got it. Are there any other modal verb transformations we should know about?
Yes. Would combines with shall to become should. So instead of saying, If it rains, we would shall stay inside. We say if it rains, we should stay inside. And would plus may becomes might. Like in if I had a chance, I might travel to Japan.
Wow, those little modal verbs are packing a punch. They can really change the meaning and nuance of a sentence. Listener, are you trying these out as we go? Don't be shy. Repeat those sentences out loud. The more you practice, the more confident you'll become.
I couldn't agree more. Now, here's another important point about using modal verbs. In conditionals, modals like could, should, might, and ought to already imply a conditional sense, so we don't use them with would. For example, we say, if you're hungry, you should eat something. Not if you're hungry, should eat something.
That makes sense. It's like we're avoiding a double dose of conditionalness. So we choose one or the other, but not both.
Precisely. And with a bit of practice, these subtle distinctions will become second nature to you.
This has been such a rewarding deep dive. I feel like I've gained a whole new understanding of conditional sentences. Any final tips for our listener on how to really master these structures and boost their English fluency?
Practice is key. Try weaving conditional sentences into your everyday conversations. Challenge yourself to express those what-ifs and possibilities. You could even keep a journal where you write down different scenarios and then create conditional sentences based on those situations. And don't be afraid to experiment. The more you play with language, the more confident you'll become.
I love those ideas. And remember, listener making mistakes is part of the learning process. Don't be discouraged if you don't get it perfect right away. Just keep practicing, and you'll be amazed at how much your English skills will improve.
Absolutely. And remember, the journey of language learning is an ongoing adventure. There's always something new to discover and explore. So keep that curiosity alive and enjoy the process of expanding your linguistic horizons.
This deep dive has been a fantastic reminder that even seemingly complex grammar concepts can be broken down and understood with a bit of guidance and practice.
I completely agree. And who knows, maybe someday you'll be the one teaching others about the intricacies of conditional sentences.
Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey into the world of conditional sentences. Until next time, keep those what-ifs coming and embrace the power of language